Hello, welcome to day 4. At this point, I'm sure that you're liking what we're doing so far. In the previous lesson, we spoke about data type and their importance in programming. Data type, as mentioned before, are labels used by computer to determine our intention, especially when we are rendering data on the computer. Now, to store this data, so for instance, you are able to present this data to the computer. How about you want to remember the data later? In some instances, you want to store the user age, numbers, whatever it is that you even want to store. You need a way to keep that in the memory. That's what we refer as instance. You want to be able to keep that very value in the memory. And that's what we call variable. Now, variable really is a way that we store data in the machine. We store it in the memory. Now, to store this, you need a way to be able to declare something like a container, right? And that's why oftentimes you're able to reassign your password, you're able to use your email to log into some devices because someone has declared a variable somewhere in a database to store those values. And that's what we'll be learning about in this lesson. It's going to be a bit longer, but just stay with me. At any point, pause it, try to practice and memorize whatever I'm saying. And if you have any question, do let me know. I'll be willing to answer all of your questions. Now let's look at some example of variable. Remember, I said variables are container that we use to store value. Now let's look at some example. I already typed them out here. Now you might be saying, I just deleted my comments there. Okay, now you might be seeing XYZ again, and you'll be wondering, is this one of those find X equation? No. Actually, that is just there. The variable can be any name. The X can be any name. In fact, when we get to naming variable rules, you'll see things that you shouldn't even name your variable as X, Y, Z anymore, right? So, but let's try to understand what variable is really. Remember that we write some numbers when we study about data type. We wrote some values, and there's no way for us to remember those values. So variable is an opportunity for us to do that. So you can see that we have X. The variable X now has the float value. In other words, at any point, we can call the X value. In fact, I'm just going to get rid of this, right? Not to really scare us. Let's declare our own variable. Let's say we want the user age. Maybe the user age, of course, is going to be an integer. Let's say it's 20. Let's say the user is 20 years old. Let's say the username, let's say his name is Michael. Let's say, what else do we need? Let's say the user location. We can just call that location. And I'm just going to say Lagos. Remember, Lagos now needs to be a string. Lagos. In fact, Michael as well needs to be a string. If not, Python is going to throw us error. Now, the cool thing about all of this that we've done is that we can call them at any point. So instead of we just writing the value inside the print function, we can say, we can call the print function and call the user age. Let's check it out. Now, if we print, let's see what we get. So I'm just going to say F5 to run it. You can see we have 20. So at any point in your program, you can call this value and it's going to work. Rather than you having to write 2020 at every point you need it, you can just store it here and it works. How about we want to print user age and username and location? You can see I'm using the comma separation or the comma separator to demarcate another value. This is how to really declare multiple value in a function. Always make sure that you have the comma to separate them. If I go ahead and I say my F5, you see we have Michael, we have Lagos, we have 20. Now, these are really, really cool because we declare them actually. Now, one thing to understand as well is naming convention. So you can see that I titled this user age. Imagine I just gave you the X, right? You can never tell what this value is for. It's too anonymous, right? But user age makes a lot of sense because you can already tell that that's what you meant without you even thinking about it, right? And this is really what we're talking about when it comes to naming convention. Now, there are a few things to note when naming your variables. So variable names can be as long as you want, and it can be short as you want, right? They can contain digits, but not symbols. In other words, your variable can have user age 1, for instance, right? Just like the way we have a user age 2, user age 3, whatever you want, actually. Then the only exception is make sure that you connect the name, whatever syllables you're having, make sure that you connect them with the underscore. It is very important because if I remove this and just space and save, let's say we run this, Python is immediately going to throw error and it's going to tell us that something is wrong here because we are declaring two different things that the machine doesn't understand. So always use your underscore to connect them. Now, a variable name must or may start with either a letter or an underscore, right? Now, for you to really understand how variable works and how you really need to cater for your variable, I would advise you to read the 6 naming rules, the 6 variable naming rules that I wrote. And of course, just check it out, read it, and you will really understand how to name variables properly and how to apply them in your project. The truth is, all of these little details matter. If you can pay attention to all of these things, trust me, you're going to really be a top-notch programmer. So right now, what I want you to do is just pause this video and just give this test a try. Now, just copy. I'm going to be having this in the description. Just make sure that you copy this and try to run it and see. But before you do that, try as much as you can to see and just guess which is right and which is wrong. So if you think this naming convention works, just, circle yes. If you think this is wrong, circle no. And if you just guess the one that will make Python to throw an error and see if your guess will be right. Remember, there are some built-in names that you cannot use. Now, whatever is a built-in name, you can use it. Int was one of it. I'm just giving you a scope, right? So they are preserved names, right? So in other words, if you even go to just Google Python preserved names, predefined names, and that you cannot use to define your variable, you're going to be seeing all of that as well. So once you do that, just come back again and let's continue learning what we have today. Let's move on with variables. So it is possible for you to reassign variable. It's what we call variable reassignment. And let's see what that means. So quickly, I'm just going to comment out this print function so that it doesn't print out again. Yes, let's create more space here just to have enough space to write more. Now, talking about variable reassignment, in fact, let me just say reassignment so we know what we're working on. Now, it is very simple, really. It's just for you to have a variable, then reassign that value to another variable. Let's see how this works. Or it works the same way. You can have one variable and assign another value to the variable. Let me show you what I mean. So let's say we have score 1. Score 1 equals to 10. It means that I can still reassign another value to this score 1. So if I say score 1 again, and I give it the value score 1, and I give it the value of 12, just guess what the value is going to produce at the end if we use the print function. So let's try to use the print function and see what we get. So I'm just going to say print score 1. Well, I know my guess, right? And I want you to guess yours. So let's see what Python is going to print for us. If I just say F5, then you see we get value of 12. And let's see, it is the value that was reassigned. So what happened here? In the first instance, you gave it the value, and in the second instance, you override the value. Just like when you're playing games, whenever you gain more scores, you get addition to your scores, and whenever you've been beaten or you lose more scores, you get subtraction. So you can see oftentimes subsequently the variable is being updated based on the actions that you're taking. And that's what we are talking about, reassignment. Okay, so now let's look at another scenario. So let's say another scenario is going to be, let's say copy this variable. In fact, let's copy this. We're just going to paste it down. Okay, then let's have, so let's say we have another score 2, and the score 2 is going to be equals to score 1. Now, can you guess what the answer will be? What we are just doing is we are reassigning variable. So let's just go ahead and copy the print function, and just, of course, we are printing this, really. Let me give space so that you can see. We are printing score 1, score 2. So if I save and run my F5, let's see what we get. We get the value of 10, right? And it's because we are reassigning this score 1. We're giving it to the value of score 2. And basically that's what's going on. So it's possible that you get one score from the other end and use it from another variable. And those are things you're really going to be doing. Another thing we are going to be looking at is dynamic versus static variable. So let me just write it out. Dynamic versus static. Okay. We can call it static typing. Remember, we need to put our comments. Now, one of the benefits of using Python is that variables are not statically typed, right? A statically typed variable requires a data type to declare before being assigned a value. In other words, all those ones that we are just, calling the name, giving the variable name straightforward. In some programming languages, you need to really declare the type. Maybe, for instance, in JavaScript, you need to use your let. In Java, you need to use integer, both in C++ as well. So all of those things require for you to declare the type first. For instance, if I was working in C++, for me to declare a variable, I will have to either say int, right, which means I'm referring to integer. I can then say maybe username. Of course, username can be an int. Let's just say age. Of course, so maybe age, I have to put a number because I'm already declaring the int, the type, right? And this is the flexibility Python is giving us. Python doesn't require that you declare any of this before it. Just declare a variable and you're good to go. And that's the reason why people oftentimes like to use Python. In other words, at any point, you can just go ahead, declare the variable name, and give it assignment operator. And also, once you do that, give it the value, and you are done, right? It is pretty much simple. And the reason why people actually love to use Python programming language. So another thing we can do is checking type. We can say, let me use my comments. Don't always forget checking type, right? We've used this function before. Sometimes you might want to know what type of value that you're getting from your code. And sometimes you might not even be sure what exactly you'll be getting. So in that kind of scenario, you can check for the type to determine if the value is an integer or if the value is type. And for you to really know this, you can use the type function. Remember, we used it earlier. So whenever you want to determine the type of a variable or of a value, you can always use type. So what we can do is, let's use print. We want to print the type, of course. So let's check the type of age. Like what's the type, data type of age? I'm just going to say age. Now, if we say F5, let's see, you can see that we get integer. And the cool thing is, because you're using variable, so you can just reference any of them. So if we say score 2 and also run it again, you can see it's integer. Let's see if we have any variable with string. We do not have, right? So let's even say a username. I'm just going to say username, and I'm going to add Michael. Okay, so let's say we just check username. If we run our F5, you can see we get string. Pretty much, always remember, it is possible for you to want to determine what type of data you are dealing with, and that will really, really help you. Now, another thing we can consider is a non-type value. Non-type, let's have our comments. We have non-type. Now, this value really is not something special, right? Sometimes we may want to create a variable, but not assign it any particular value. So at that particular point, you can use the non-type. For instance, you declare a variable, you declare a container. You do not want to use it, right? And you don't want to really assign any value to it. Just go ahead and give it a non-type. Let's see what I mean. Maybe we have score. We don't know what the score is going to be. We can either use 0 or we can use none, right? So this none is just basically saying there's nothing, right? Now let's check. Let's print the value of none. Let's see. Let's print the score. Let's see what we get. If I say F5, mistakenly type something. I'm just going to delete it. Say F5. You can see you get the value of none, means nothing, right? And if we check the type, let's just go ahead and check the type. Let's see what we get as well. If you say F5, you can see you get non-type value. Pretty much that's one of the things you're going to be needing as you move forward. All those things are not really rocket science. I would advise that you go through all those things again and again. In fact, if possible, rewatch the video so that you can really assimilate all of the things I've said. I don't want you to really seem confused when we get to joining all of these things together. So spend your time and go through what we have. And if you like this lesson, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all our social media handles so that you can be notified every time we release a new tip. Until next time, I'll see you in the next lesson.